Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Black History Month conversation with Equity. Today, I am here with my colleagues, and I'm even happier to call them my friends. I have Naj, James, and Jacques here, and I've met them at different stages in my journey as an educator, and I'm so glad that now they get to meet each other, and also you all get to meet them and learn about the incredible work that they do in education. um, Today's topic is a bit more personal, I'll say. Like, for me, it was a bit triggering, but I think it's important to elevate the experiences of Black educators, not just teachers, because educators is inclusive of lots of roles. I think it's important to elevate the voice of people who are like boots to the ground right now, and not just the leadership that we see. We see superintendents, we see school principals, we see all of these gatekeepers, in a way, speaking on behalf of us. And a lot of times the narrative is wrong. They're getting it wrong. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you all a little bit about what they do, and we'll get started. Naj, go first.
I was about to say, who do you want to go first, Trace? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Naj Turner. I recently graduated with my counseling license in 2020. So I am currently actually not a counselor, which I'll get to when we get into our questions a little bit later. But I'm doing education consulting work right now and curriculum development with a school district in Northern California. I'm currently located in LA right now. So dibbling and dabbling in a little bit of everything, but everything very much centered around social justice and equity work.
Okay, consultating. I can't even talk. Consultant. Consultating, all the verbs.
All those things. I'm getting choked up too. You good?
I didn't know if Jacques and I were going to dance back and forth to figure out who's going to go, but I'll go ahead and go. Hey, everybody. I'm James Bridgeforth. You see my name there. I'm currently a PhD student and educational researcher at the University of Southern California. Before I did that, I've done, a few things in education. I used to work as a college admissions counselor, so I did that for a few years. Then I decided to be a teacher, and I was teaching elementary school, which is actually where I met LaTrice. My very first teaching job, and then actually worked with LaTrice for 3 years after that. So most of my teaching career has actually been working together. And so after it's about 2019, I decided that I wanted to not just do the work that's inside the classroom, but I really wanted to think about education policy more broadly. And so then that's why I decided to go back and get my PhD. So most of my research focuses on organizational change, educational leadership. I study anti-Blackness in schools. I study racial violence, racial crisis management. Basically, my job is to figure out how are we going to make our schools better for Black kids, Black teachers, Black staff, Black people more broadly. I really care about liberatory educational opportunities and experiences for all the Black people. So.
And I'm Jacques. I am a teacher. I have been teaching for 7 years. I started off my teaching career with Teach for America, where I was the first year and LaTrice was the second year. And that, though TFA can be a hot mess sometimes, it really helped me begin my journey of understanding the education gap. And that is what my work has been about. So I have a master's in education, a master's of science in education from the University of Miami that I got while I was there. And I recently went back, and I too am interested in consulting, and I have a master's in industrial organizational psychology with a focus in coaching and consulting. And it's my goal to, really help shift some of the things that are going on in the school. And I think it really starts with an attitude of love. And I feel like that kind of is lacking a little bit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm in the classroom currently, and I am tired, so I'm excited about this conversation.
Tight. So, one shout out to all the credentials, right? Like, this is what Black excellence looks like. Take a picture, freeze frame this, and just knowing all of you all, it has been incredible to just like watch each of us grow, like in our friendships, but also just like individually. Like, y'all are bomb. And when I tell you, I could have, like, I mean, Naj and I know, we know plenty of people that are connected in education, right? Like, we went to Harvard, right? Yes, we did. And I think it's important that I use my platform to also support the people like Jacques and James and Naj and growing their work too, because I mean, there's space for all of us in this consulting world. And there's plenty of anti-Blackness and racist just ish going on in schools that all of us can be employed forever. So just to dive into it, Jacques, thank you for starting with like, I am a teacher and I am tired. Like, just like deep breath, sigh. I am right there with you. I am exhausted. And I don't know what is more exhausting. Having, you know, teachers were already overworked and underpaid, right? Like, that's not a new thing. But in the pandemic, I feel like I've taken on so many more roles that I didn't have as a classroom teacher. I am a secretary. When kids aren't logged into Zoom, I'm the first person to call and let their parents know. I have done a lot of crisis management in that I have had families who have been in situations like eviction and, you know, being extremely hungry, not having food, not having heat, not having, like, you know, the bare necessities of life. And even though I can't by myself solve those problems, they weigh on me. And one thing I remember, Naj, talking to you about when we were at Hugsy was the secondary trauma that comes along with teaching while Black. And that is my first question for you all. We hear like driving while Black, but I think teaching while Black is something that is extremely exhausting. But if you all could just share, like, what does that mean in your context and for you? What does it mean to teach while Black?
You want to keep the same order? Oh.
I think for me, one thing that when I reflect on my experience, it's traumatic anywhere you go and that you teach. Like I used to have this mentality because I started off teaching in Liberty City, Miami. So I had this mentality that, okay, if I stop teaching in the hood, then it will be less traumatic. And then I taught at a school that was not in the hood, and there was a whole nother set of trauma that I was facing there too, dealing with helicopter white parents constantly badgering me and in a way undermining me or checking my LinkedIn page and saying to me that they checked my LinkedIn page. Like, what does that mean? But like when I was teaching at Liberty City, I'm seeing this extreme poverty from students who look like me. So no matter where I was in the midst of trauma. And then on top of that, when it comes to administrators, the trauma that you get from them is the same. Like, you feel like you're not being listened to, or, you know, it can be very patronizing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jacques, you bring up a lot of good points, and it's really similar. It's fascinating because, like, I'm not in the classroom right now. I'm doing my work. Like, I spend most of my days conducting interviews, I'm talking to school leaders and and people and educators really all across in different parts of the country, and just trying to figure out. Some of my work is around the COVID-19 response, how educators have been responding to it, what have they been doing, what have they been needing, and a lot of it is just part of why I guess I'm tired is that with COVID, you can't really I'm not one. I couldn't get away from it because my work involves that. Also, I do work on racial violence, so I'm constantly studying and all the different issues that are happening, all these different incidents that are happening all over the place, and so you're kind of stuck in all of that. You can't get away from it. And then also, I think one of the bigger things, and this is not just me, but I feel with a lot of teachers and a lot of educators, there's never any time for you to breathe and actually do things for yourself, even particularly dealing with your own family issues. So in the midst of everybody, of course, going online, figuring things out, I think probably back in April or May, my brother had COVID and he recovered and he got fine and that's okay. We get to December, all of a sudden, or really January of this year, my grandfather got COVID. My grandfather is 81 years old, and I'm sitting here trying to go to meetings and do interviews and talk to people about their experiences, while I'm also in the morning checking with him, hey, are you okay? Are you still breathing? What's going on with that? And then the other piece of it is that isolation is a huge thing. I'm now living in LA, all of my family and everybody lives back on the East Coast, and so I'm just all right, what do you even do? So I guess this idea of being tired, it's you're constantly doing, and there's all the stuff that's happening, but there's never, again, any time to just take a break and actually care for yourself. So what can we do to actually move forward and not be just always going? I feel we're literally always running. So
I have to say that I agree with that, James, just kind of on the note of this being a necessary time for us to take a pause, but since everything is happening so quickly, it feels like we can't breathe. And then it's literally all these different layers are just added on to just us being Black people existing, right? It's all of these health inequities. There was all this stuff going on with the election. There was all this stuff that was happening with police brutality and stuff like that. And so from my perspective, and I'm thinking about counseling while Black, and the fact that when this pandemic began, I was a counselor at a performing arts school in Boston. And for me, I think that it just means holding space for people to talk through their problems and traumas while also acknowledging and making space to work on your own. I always say that counselors need counseling too. I feel that should be a requirement for any person who's going into the mental health field. You need to be talking to somebody too, just period, because you're dealing with a lot with just what you hear from your patients, so I definitely have to say that it is a lot to take in, because students are going through a lot, and who else are they going to talk to if they don't feel comfortable talking to their teachers, and if they don't have counselors or teachers who they can identify with, then really who are they talking to? Really, they're probably just internalizing all of this trauma, all of this confusion, all of this infuriating silencing of our voices and stuff. So I don't know, that's kind of my thoughts on educating and counseling in general. While Black, I guess you could say it's a badge of honor, but also it's kind of a double, I don't want to say a double burden, but sometimes that is what it feels like. Because we have our own stuff that we're trying to work through. And sometimes I feel students have a lot of questions and stuff just about the world and stuff. Say, for example, if a student is coming in and they're crying because they're I'm triggered by this 17-year-old boy who was shot by the cops, and my brother is 17 and he could be shot just by going through the grocery store, right? And so what are we supposed to do as people who exist and live in this world and know about oppression and know that we don't have the answers, right? What can we say to that kid to let them know they're safe when we don't even know if we're safe? So it's confusing. It's a lot, but I also think that if you have a calling for this work and you do it, then that's for a reason and you're prepared for it. But you just have to prioritize taking care of yourself in different ways.
Yeah, I often think about, and I'm going to have a few friends and colleagues on next week to talk about this, but this idea of like this additional impact that Black educators have, but it's also this additional burden. And it's a burden because we already hold ourselves to the standard of we are here and we must advocate and we must do this work for the kids that look like us, and because we needed us when we were kids, right? And then to Crystal's point of then the expectation is that we are in the world of COVID are also supposed to give even more to connect the dots for Black and brown children. And the idea that our kids are somehow superhuman and must be more resilient, right? The last conversation we had about grit being racist, I got a lot of people saying, well, like, it's not, it's just, kids should know that they have to work hard. And I'm like, yeah, but when you work hard and the system keeps knocking you on your ass, like, no one should be held to that standard, right? No one should be told that, okay, the system is flawed, but forget the fact that the system is flawed. We're not going to do anything about that. Instead, we are going to just prepare you to have this, and Naj, please tell me if I'm not using the correct term, but this hyper response to trauma. Like and I saw this post, at some point during COVID, like I feel like it's been just I don't know, it's felt like a whole lifetime since last March. And we're pulling up on March again, and yeah. But I saw this meme, it's like independence or hyper independence is a hyper response to always being held to a high standard. Like always wanting to do more, give more. And honestly, I don't have any more to give right now. Like, but when I look at the children I serve and I see their faces and I know what their home lives are like, and then they come into my classroom virtually, or right now APS is hybrid. They come into my space and they are so genuinely happy to see me. And I'm like, little old me, like I look crazy. I am worn out. My cup is empty, okay? But when they are happy to see me, it gives me a little bit more of a boost. But I also feel a little bit more drained every day. And quite honestly, like, I know I'm a good educator. I know I'm a great teacher. Like, I don't need any teaks, nothing to validate that for me. But I often feel so less than. Like, I'm like, great. I gave everything I got, and it's still not enough. And I see in the chat, and this is something I think we can all like connect with, is LaTrice said that, people underestimate us as Black educators. Yes. And when you appear young, yes. I feel like that has been one of the greatest hurdles for me in my work. People are like, oh, you look so young. And I'm like, I am young, and like, the revolution, and I'm like really channeling Malcolm X and like Fred Hampton recently. I did too much like watching of documentaries and Judas and the Black Messiah this weekend, but it is what it is. And I am like, yes, I am young. I am young. Malcolm was young. Fred Hampton he didn't see 22. And so what? Like, if you had the solution, if what you having 10, 20 more years of experience and you figured it out, why are you sitting on it?
LaTrice, you know what I feel like that is too? Is like, I feel there is also like there's a created tension when we have these conversations about age, because then you have the opposite of that, which is like the older teachers don't want to try new things, and you're responsible for teaching the older teachers, and like this is this investment that comes along with you being young. Like, well, you have to be the most energetic and the most enthusiastic, like, because you're green and you're just happy to be here. But then you have
Uh-oh.
I don't want to. I mean, I think I can kind of go where he was going with that, but it's like it
Yeah,
is.
go ahead. He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. Yeah, it is this kind of idea that like oh yeah, you're young, you're this, you have to do all this extra work and stuff. But I also think it gets into a lot of the. I mean, like we're tired and we have our own things, but a lot of the older teachers and older educators, especially the Black ones, they're tired too. Like, and they're tired and like because they've been beaten down by the system as well. Like they may, when they were younger, they may have pushed back and done all the things. And I was thinking about this before we got on here, and I was like, and LaTrice, you know this because we've been doing the same things for a minute. But like every school that I feel like I'm in, I feel like I was always involved in like trying to push back on something, trying to make something better for the kids, trying to do this, because it's never just that I can just teach. I never had the luxury of just like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go in my classroom and close my door and we're just gonna teach and things are gonna be okay. Because if like there's one kid in that building who's not getting what they need and the school can do something about it, or the
turn it down,
we can't sit here. And so but then even with all that, like shoot, when I think back on it, like I was exhausted every single day. And I still haven't gotten over it. Like I feel like I'm still exhausted from it because the work is never done. There's always new stuff to do and new fights they have.
Yeah, and James, you may know where I'm going with this somewhat of an anecdote. So I remember being a part of not choosing this, but being forced into the 91 crew. James and I were born in 91. We had two other colleagues at this time who were born in 91. And similar to like what Jacques was saying, they're like, you're just green, like you all are just so ready and willing to work. And it's like, actually, no, the systems and structures in this place are messed up. Your leadership is poor. We don't have the answers, but we know that what we're doing is not working. And I'm not insane. So I want to try something different. Like it was very much so, and we were pushed out of that space, not literally pushed out, but it was like, maybe what's the word, radical? I don't know. It was just like, we weren't palatable.
Maybe we weren't, maybe you're not the right fit. Maybe
it was fit.
Maybe this isn't the right place for you. And it's like, okay.
And it's like, this is pre-COVID. Like I'm exhausted. And it's like, or I remember this year having my assessments and my student work audited, because there's no way this girl could have her children performing at a high level with all of the foolishness. I think that was the word of the year, foolishness, going on in this classroom. And I'm like, the foolishness that's going on is not going to stop the show. Like the kids, we're going to work, we're going to learn some stuff around here. But also with that, why am I, again, teaching while Black, forced to deal with traumatic behaviors? When we underserve the kids, we in turn underserve the teachers. And not to mention, we had 30 kids in each class. And all of that to say, like, I don't think I'll ever get over being tired from like doing this work. I think when I'm least tired is when I'm doing the work of equity, because it's like, yes, it is 7 p.m. I worked all day, did intervention groups, went to all these PDs and meetings, finished the day at like 4:15, went to the doctor, came back home, and I'm like, boom, now I'm alive. Like, I feel like I'm alive, and I'm also in the back of my head, like, whew, I'm tired. Hey, Sarah, girl. Oh, I love when the just worlds collide. So Sarah was on with me back in November when we talked about decolonizing Thanksgiving and just the work of teaching about indigenous peoples and culture. So yeah, I just love when the worlds just like overlap. Moving ahead, and I know the pandemic we talked about how it's impacted us as educators, but also how like we were tired before COVID, right? Like, but specifically, how has the pandemic disproportionately impacted you as like an educator or individual, because we're people too? So how has it disproportionately impacted you at the intersection of just like your identity as a Black person and whatever other intersection that you want to think about? So it could be as an educator, it could be as a man, a woman, it could be, you know, at any intersection.
I can kind of speak on that first, I guess. Going back to your comment about you saying you feel like you're always tired or like you were born tired, it makes me think of the
yes,
song, because I'm like, girl, that's so true.
That's my Pisces sis. When I was like, girl, yes, write this album about me.
Literally born tired. And it's almost like it's like an unstated expectation that you're supposed to just hop in and like take up this like badge of honor and do this stuff. And it's like, no, F that. Y'all are not taking care of me. Like, y'all barely pay educators. Let's talk about health benefits and all that kind of stuff too, like if we really want to get into it, but I guess that's neither here nor there. Got a little mad, but what I will say is that I started this pandemic and I was finishing my graduate program, right? So I was similar to James, feeling a lot of the isolation, right? But on the flip side, right? Because my chosen family and stuff is out here in LA, and I was in white, cold Boston in a single dorm room by myself, looking at the walls, talking about, oh, this is quarantine, like,
yes,
straight up cabin fever. Like, then I feel like stuff like that. Like, people aren't meant to be isolated and stuff like that. Like, that's a form of warfare in countries, you know, like people, it's not healthy. It's not right. But I would say just kind of like navigating those experiences, like finishing up my grad program, counseling students who are going through like extreme trauma, and just like meeting all types of like crisis management interventions and stuff via like phone and video, and just like learning all this new stuff, right? And then trying to transition from Massachusetts to California and find a job and apply for jobs, and coming across all of these different like websites and algorithms, and it's not the right fit, and all those different experiences, right? Long story short, it took a toll, but for me, I think similar to you saying that you were tired before it started, like I am someone who has struggled with anxiety and depression for like several years. And so when the pandemic started and then everything just kind of spiraled, I feel like in a way things spiraled for me, like in terms of my mental health and stuff like that too, which is why I decided to check in with myself, know myself, and say, okay, maybe counseling isn't exactly what I want to do right now until I figure out like my life and like just, you know, being a happy, healthy person again, which is why I decided to go into consulting. But I think for me, it was just necessary for me to check in with myself and realize like this is not something that is going to benefit me at this time. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like I would encourage more people to have those conversations with themselves and not necessarily think about like what would be good or helpful for other people, because like you said, LaTrice, if your cup is empty and you can't pour, what what are you doing? You know, like, what are you putting out, really? So I think put you first, because they're not doing that. These companies will replace you. These school districts will replace you in a minute and pay somebody else with less experience more money than you because they got lighter skin. But that's neither here nor there.
That's it right there.
You know, that's here. That's where my thoughts are. And
before your body's even in the ground, they will have your position on Indeed, on LinkedIn, wherever. Like it's before your body's
you'll be warm.
And the thing about it, not even that, just that, but like they'll tell the story that like, oh, you wanted to die, or you were working, you care about the kids. This is what you sacrificed.
She gave everything.
It's like
including her life. It's like who is expected to give their life for their work? Like, and we've been gaslit, right? Like they're like, you're taking it out of proportion. I'm like, no, I'm not. One, I'm not a babysitter. I didn't go pay all this money for all these degrees to be a babysitter. Like, that's not my job. And I think it became apparent maybe to that 80% of white women who are teachers when the pandemic hit, that it's like, yeah, people really don't all that much respect what you do. They want to drop their kids off to you, and they want you to take care of their children, not just teach their children. That's an added bonus. This is a generalization. This is not everyone, but many people had to get to know their kids. And I joke like with my friend all the time. I'm like, I don't think many people like their children. Like, and it's funny, right? But it's like, I think the pandemic showed parents, like not all parents, many parents, like, oh, like this parenting thing, I do very little, especially when my children get into like that K-12 age. They spend most of their waking hours away from me. Like, this is a lot. And all of a sudden there was that big outcry, right? Like, yes, teachers, we love you. We ain't getting nary raise, okay? No raise. I got thank yous. Yeah, thank yous are cool, right? Like, yes, you're welcome, and pay me. Like, I'm up here jumping.
Open up your purse.
Drop the coins. I want to be where the money resides in 2021. Like, and it don't even have to be a whole lot of money. Like, I've never met an educator that was like, I want to be dripped out in like the finest. I just want to pay my bills, and I also want people to not look at me sideways because I take a sick day. Like, I just want to know that today, just going to the doctor, they're like, oh, you have $130 bill from the last time you were here. And I'm like, I'm healthy. I was here for a wellness check, but somehow this is $130. Like, all right. And then I look at my insurance and I'm like, I can't forget.
Or how about, instead of like all this arguing in the debate whether we should forgive student loan debt, like, matter of fact, just look at the teachers. They're professionals. They barely make any money. Let's just drop all of it. Let's just drop the teachers. Can we have something first?
No, especially not you Black teachers.
Yeah, like the answer is no. They very clearly said, we ain't doing that.
They're like, you chose this life. It didn't choose you. You chose it.
So that actually is a part that like it's been frustrating to me overall throughout this entire time, where it's been like, oh, well, teacher, like, because when they're talking about like frontline workers and people in the pandemic and like working and doing stuff, well,
I am essential
for this, and everybody signed up for this. The teachers, y'all signed up to do this kind of work. Nobody in their contract signed up to be all these different things for everybody, and to be doing it in the middle of a pandemic, and to be doing it while their families are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic.
That part.
They didn't sign up for all that. And then again, y'all are not paying people But yet, and then even at this point, now we're arguing with people and telling teachers, oh, teachers need to get back in these schools because I don't understand why y'all aren't working. Y'all need to be back in.
And they still working from home. They telling us to go back in the buildings from Zoom.
And it's like, right. I'm like, y'all having these school board meetings and y'all doing it on Zoom, but y'all telling the teachers, oh, it's safe to go back in the buildings. These same old buildings that weren't safe to begin with, they weren't safe before the pandemic, but y'all sitting here like, oh, but we adding a fan and we're going to open the windows and it's going to work. And we're going to, what somebody said, oh, we're going to do all this cleaning and all this stuff. We didn't have enough custodians to clean in the first place.
Y'all, oh my God, there was this teacher who tweeted. He was like, his students said, well, how they gonna keep the schools clean when they couldn't even keep the bathrooms clean before the pandemic? And I'm like, that child better preach, because my classroom was across from the hallway from the bathroom last year, and and it's nothing against the custodial staff that support our building. It's nothing against them, because they are doing the best they can with what they have. Like,
we are allied together in this.
Exactly. And it's like, when we talk about educators, it is the teachers, it is like principals, assistant principals, but it's also the bus drivers and the cafeteria workers and the custodians. Like, all these people are struggling and trying to make this thing work. And it's like they're in the schools doing it, trying to make everything happen. But the people who have the power to actually change something and actually make it better for everybody, oh, well, we'll get to it next year because the next fiscal year is going to come up in the budget. We don't have next year. We don't have time for that. Like,
it's always been next year, right? They're like, we're going to change. It's like this. It's like, no, what about now? What are we going to do right now? And I feel like one of the hidden, and this is like kind of like the other question I wanted us to discuss is like, how has the pandemic specifically impacted your work? Like, I launched equity in the pandemic because I was like, look, I had enough. Like, I am tired of all people, not just white people, all people employing racist ideas and weaponizing them against Black children. I'm over it. Like, I am tired of being a pawn in that system. And, you know, yes, I am still in that system, but let's be clear. Like, it's not like I've been making six figures and I can just dip, peace out, and just, you know, go full force into consulting. And also, we won't get into the fact that y'all don't want to pay Black people, period. Like, y'all don't want to pay us equally for our work. So, you know, I've been blessed in the way that equity has taken off. However, I will say that one of the things I think is the greatest, injustice that is happening right now that people can't see because it's, you know, it's not a vaccine, right? Like, it's not a mask. The greatest injustice that's happening right now is we have the opportunity to completely tear down public education. Remember, I was like, burn it down earlier. We can literally burn it down and start over. Because guess what? Everybody wants to go back to normalcy. It didn't work for our Black and brown kids either. Like, it has never worked for us. Actually, it hasn't worked for many kids because we always hear the story of, oh, the kids need to be back in school. They want to see their friends. No, that is true for some children. I have kids thriving virtually who really struggled in a setting because kids have anxiety. Kids deal with depression. Kids deal with all these other things that, you know, we name later in life. And, you know, they have actually found their sweet spot. They're in a groove right now. And but the thing is, all that to say, it's not just about a one size fit all. Like, everybody's like, let's go back to normal. I'm like, normal was broken. What we're doing now is broken. How about we learn something from this and start that differentiation word? You love to tell me to differentiate in my room. How about we differentiate the opportunities to even be, you know, like to even be a learner? Like, we talk about universal design for learning, right? How about we actually employ that from a systems viewpoint? Not just from, oh, like, you need to give learners multiple access points. How about you give me multiple access points? how about you give multiple access points and options to families instead of telling them they have to operate within this very prescriptive structure? But I'm gonna get off my high horse.
But you know what it is too? It's also like, this is gonna sound a little shady, but I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna express it. They constantly ask us, administrators, people who are higher up, will constantly ask you to do things that they will not do themselves. If we're talking about differentiation, I have yet to see a PD that's been differentiated. Okay? It literally, at my school, literally the same administrator will come every single day that we have a PD, every Friday whenever we have our PDs, and they will be the only one talking. The engagement will be super low, but that person does not care, and they keep along. And I'm like, you would give me a whole bunch of level ones on the TEKS. I don't know what, I can't remember.
They're gonna make a 0 column for you.
Right. If I did that, but you sit there and you do that yourself.
Yeah.
And I just also wanted to shout out some of my friends in the chat. Hey, Tamia.
This is not one of those.
Hey, Alyssa. Yeah. But yeah.
Hey, y'all. No, thank you so much for joining. This is that kind of place. Like, it's an informal place. It's a place for us to just be our complete whole selves, which I find we don't get to do much, right? Like in our day-to-day. Speaking of PD, y'all. Now, I love the person that leads this PD in my current teaching, in my current school. I love this person. She is the only one who gives us outside PD for reading. Now, it's really interesting because it's always the same things. Like, we did these exact same PDs last year when we weren't in a panoramic, pandemonium, all the different words.
Pentagon.
Yeah, I like Pentagon. Pentagon is it for today. When we were not in a Pentagon. And I'm like, the only difference is you're telling me now, here's a list of 500 online tools. Pick some. And I'm like, girl, love you, but where's where's the differentiation? Like, I need something different. And I think that's another thing. It comes with gatekeeping. It comes with the gatekeeping, and it's the power hoarding when the white supremacy culture is prevalent in majority Black schools. But that's next week. We're gonna talk about that next week. But white supremacy culture is just so consuming, and we just uphold that this is right. I know that we are in a completely different model. And then they're like, oh, hybrid teach. Teach the children that are in the room and also teach the children that are at home. And don't turn your back to the children in the classroom, but you better not turn your back to those children at home. I'm at home, by the way. I'm teleworking right now.
Model it. And that's, I always try my administrators all the time. Whenever, I'm the person who's like, well, you know what? I actually need to see it. Can you model it?
I invite all the time. Sure.
I'm a visual learner. I learn by example.
Model it. And at that point, my ring light almost fell down.
Yes, for the ring light. Mine's stable though.
Because it's ridiculous. How dare you ask me to do something and you just expect me to just, and then you're going to come and critique. Show me how you want it done.
Yeah.
Give me a good model.
But see, the thing is, I don't think that they even know how they want it done. And I think that's a part of the problem, is that it's not that, we want them to model it and show it, but I do think they're also well, this is what I was told to do, so let me go ahead and tell y'all to do it. But then at the same time, at some point, you're going to have to stop and actually tell, even at that level, part of, for me, being a leader, if you're going to be an ed leader, is being able to say, no, we're not doing that in this school. We're not going to push our teachers to do things that are ridiculous. No, maybe we do need to rethink this, because the whole y'all need to do all these different, basically y'all trying to make people dance, sing, do all, twirl plates, do all this stuff, but yet nobody knows how to do it. And I'm like, but what? Show me one person somewhere, some school like that is doing all this work the way that y'all want it to. And like, sure, maybe we can see it happening, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, not just a school. I need you to show me a school that has a similar demographic.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to show me a school that has children on these levels.
Because that's what they talk so much about, like, even about like reopening. Like, oh yeah, we can, you know, in our school, like there was somebody I saw either on Twitter or somewhere, they were like, well, our school in the suburbs, we've been open for a long time. We opened up a long time ago. We're all good. Your school, that's real great, but your school has working air. Your school has heat. Your school has actual bathrooms. Your water works. And so it's like, what you show me, like you said, show me somewhere that has what we have, and then we can talk about it. But until that point, go sit over there.
And stop modeling it after communities that aren't hit hard by COVID. Like, we cannot ignore the fact that Black and brown communities are struggling with this virus more. And it's not just going to disappear just because they say, okay, go back to school. You can't expect, or like, Black and brown people already have a lot of mistrust with health physicians and stuff. You know, people are already like, that vaccine, I ain't taking that, da-da-da-da-da. So it's like, how do you try to put all those factors together and then expect to send kids and teachers back and then expect that things are going to go well? You think it's not going to be a shit show?
Well, we're not going to even get into the hiding of the COVIDs. Yeah, to me, I feel like we're friends and we can chat offline about the hiding of the COVIDs. I found this because I saved this post on Instagram recently. It's from Black Girls Teach, and they say, we often talk about the gatekeeper school leaders who silence educators when they frequently speak up and advocate for students and staff. It's time we talk about the coworkers who remain silent, even though they 100% agree. Then thank you privately for sharing what you said. And that is a personal struggle I'm experiencing. Like, I experienced it like very vividly last week, or a couple weeks ago. And it was, you know, very much so. Administrators rushed into the Zoom, and you know, the gaslighting began, and then the demeaning of, well, you just don't understand. This is what data-driven instruction is, and I'm like, okay, yeah, and I hit a nerve. That was not my intention. I'm advocating for my kids. And then I see the head nods in the Zoom. And I appreciate that, right? Like, everybody has a different level of comfortability. And personally, like right now, well, not right now, y'all know me for a while. I just burn it down. Like, it bubbles up in me. And then I'm like, no, we gotta cut it. So, but it's from the place of service for children, right? And it's like, you know, the things I want to do actually won't make my job necessarily easier. It'll make the outcome more rewarding. It'll make, not just for me, but for the kids. Like, it's like, you know, I'm not looking for the easy way out. I just want the way that's going to benefit the children. If I'm gonna work myself like this, let me work towards attainable outcomes. Anyway. But it's the text messages like, oh, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Or, oh my goodness, I feel you. And it's like, we're gonna always be in this space then. Like, I'll be the martyr or the person that's always speaking up, and you'll silently agree. But I'm also not here to tell people to push past levels of comfortability, but more so to call to the attention that the gatekeepers create culture, right? And everybody isn't built like me, right? Like, you know, I get to feeling Malcolm in my spirit, and I'm like, what you gonna do? Fire me? And not like in a disrespectful way, Lord knows, but it's just like, I didn't do anything. Like, I didn't do anything that was unethical. I didn't disrespect you. I didn't raise my voice at you. I simply asked a question or pushed back, and you ain't like that. What Carisha say to Saucy Santana? She said, your voice is little, and I don't like that.
That's the thing. Like, just the fact that you even thought to have the audacity to even have a thought to push back, that's what the issue is. Because, I mean, yeah, there were plenty of times in, again, every school that I worked in where if I see something wrong, I'll be like, that's actually wrong, and here's why it's wrong, and here's the policy that actually shows exactly why it's wrong. But if you, as a lowly teacher, are pushing back like that, what you mean? Like, how dare you? How dare you have that thought? And then especially if you're Black and you're pushing back against a white administrator.
Oh no, stop it.
Oh, ooh, you did that?
It's a culture. It's a culture of compliance. It's a culture of compliance that we are all swimming in, and it's toxic. Like everybody's afraid to speak up. And I'll never forget this. This is an anecdote, a little aside. James was speaking the truth one time at a meeting.
I knew you were going to do this.
I had a panic attack, okay? Because he was speaking truth. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? We're all about to lose our job. James going to lose
You about to lose your job.
I'm about to lose my job. But that's the
Was I about to lose my job? I don't remember this.
Girl, I don't know. You don't come out after 6. This was way after your hours.
This had to have been like 9:00 at night. up in the cafeteria, up at the school, going back and forth. But.
Oh yeah, no, I was at the house.
But, you know, I just said to my friend the other day, like, there's been a shift in my mindset where I was just like, you know what? I'm at the point where that doesn't scare me. Because that energy that you need to comply or else we'll get rid of you energy, okay, you can get rid of me. But at the end of the day, I'm a Black man who has 3 degrees. I'll find somebody somewhere else to go. My mama's a nurse. You think my mom is ever stressed out about her job? Okay, you want to let me go? Okay, the other hospitals. And that's the same thing too. It's like sometimes we have to just show, like, at the end of the day, the kids are going to miss me. The parents are going to miss me. The people I have relationships with in these buildings are going to miss me. You're going to do yourself a disservice by this bravado and like trying to make people cry.
Despite your face. That's a country saying that my mama be saying. I'm like, yeah, girl. But I never really understood what that meant until like I became like a professional after college. I was like, oh, that's what they mean. Like, you know, that's what it means. Like, essentially get rid of the person that is, you know, doing more good than harm just to save face. But it's like, you know what? You're not really saving face. You're more so just like showing everyone else that when you can't take conflict, and again, conflict has a negative connotation. It is not a negative word. It simply means an altercation with people who have different opinions or life viewpoints, and that is totally valid. But so often, like, white supremacy just like boils up in schools, right? It's like, you know, fear of open conflict. No, let's have a conflict, because the thing is, I might learn something too. And I want to learn and I want to understand your thinking, but I also want you to be willing to learn and understand my thinking too.
Productive conflict.
Yeah, it's like no one's saying like we need to have a knockout, drag out. We don't have to, like, no, I'm not saying we need to be unkind to each other. What I'm saying is, like, you know, we put so many negative connotations. We want everyone to feel so safe, and safety in a world ruled by white supremacy is backing away from those difficult conversations. But it's like having a difficult time isn't a negative thing. We put that connotation on it because we don't want to deal with the emotions. And I mean, goes back to how Black people have been, comfort. Like, we don't like how Black people are vilified. It's like, no, it's your comfort. It's not me. It's not my skin. It's not what I'm saying. Because I've sat in places and a white person has said exactly what I said, and I get you just seem really upset, and they get oh, thanks for sharing.
I just want to, but that's a normal thing. But this is what they do. It's like, again, trying to vilify you. Like, I mean, and for people that are like watching, like, sure, I can be very passionate, but I distinctly remember my passion being I was told that I was aggressive. And I was like, I'm not being aggressive. You just don't like the fact that, again, I have the thought to say something to you about like what's going on. But that's how we end up silencing people. And that's particularly how we end up silencing Black educators, because like, ooh, you're too aggressive. Like, you're then afraid. And then again, they do threaten you with the, oh, you're going to lose your job. Or are you sure you want to speak out? Because if you do that, you may not get that promotion, or you may not get to be this, and that. And it's like, okay, but if I can't be my actual self, well, what's the point?
Yep. And that's a call, and that's the charge I have for Black educators, period. Like, I know we work in toxic environments that may not even be toxic because of the immediate, supervisor or leader you have. The system is broken. We don't have to, we know that. But if you could find the strength to be your authentic self, I think that will start to shift. And I will say, I have not always been my authentic self. I wasn't my authentic self today with a certain, in a certain time frame, doing a certain thing. However, I think like the more we can bring our authentic selves to our work, the more we'll be able to feel the not the passion, just to have the level of comfort to just speak up, like say, hey, and to know like I'm not being an angry Black woman. I'm just stating how I feel. That's your perception. You might want to go check your biases and stop projecting onto me. Go ahead, y'all.
You know what's just coming to my mind right now is like, you want to be able to really just address these things as they happen. Mm-hmm. But so many times as an educator, it's like, I gotta send this email. If I check, like I'm thinking about as an educator, the amount of homophobic things I've heard from my colleagues. When I think about the misogynistic things I've seen happen to my female coworkers, like big sexual harassment, and I'm there to witness it. Just mountains upon mountains of things that you're hit with daily. And on top of that, you have to teach the kids, deal with your own stuff at home. Sometimes you feel paralyzed and you just don't know, there's always going to be something. So that's just what hit me. And that's really, I think, what makes me tired and exhausted after a day is like, that was draining. That was toxic. That was triggering. And I had to deal with it. And I still have to go home and do this PowerPoint for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have to get Jacques some internet. Love him.
I mean, at least it's kind of a good shot. Like, he's smiling, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe I should take a screenshot. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that, y'all. But to that point, right? It's like choosing the battle. Am I going to expend all of the emotional energy and time, because we never have enough time? Am I going to expend all of that to address this, or am I going to go back into my classroom and finish these lesson plans and post these grades? Speaking of posting grades, I need to do that. Like picking and choosing, and it's like you're in between a rock and a hard place, right? Like, do I do the work of maybe nudging this space towards to being more welcoming for me and people who look like me, or do I just, fall back because it wasn't that bad? Like, I remember speaking of like sexual assault, I don't know if Jacques was referring to something I shared with him, but I can share that I have been on the receiving end of that in a school. And then I've been told that, well, what did you do? Because, of course I invited the assault, or do you want better? Second year teaching, there was a shooting at the school I worked at. Cop shot someone who had robbed a nearby bank. That person had ran. Miami has open schools, like many parts of schools are outside. That person ran into like our school space and was shot and died on our school property. You think we got a crisis counselor? No. Do you think we got any type? I was like literally a baby teacher, and I'm like, this is not what I can't understand this. I need to process this. But you just tuck it away. You tuck it all away.
I lost a student my second year teaching in Miami. He was shot.
That's so common.
And the next day, not, hey, Mr. Etienne, do you need to go speak to the counselor? Do you need anything? Can we have his file? Can we just, so it's, MDCPS policy, we just need his file. We need to look at his student work, I'm like, okay, here you go.
Yeah. And
it's the same, like, Jacques and we were talking about this earlier, but like, even like recently, like in Atlanta, there was an administrator who died, like a Black woman who died, like I can't say because of the stress and everything about being at work, but like literally died. And then the school just went on, just like, okay, well, I guess, that's really sad, but the kids still got to do the learning and the teacher still got to teach. So, but like, do you actually give people time to grieve? Do you give people time to really like sit with all the things that are going on? Or are we just asking people to just keep pushing? And again, keep pushing for what? Because to be quite honest, this education system is trash to begin with. And so what are we pushing for? What exactly is this? And again, we need to keep going.
Yes.
Ooh, like that's important. Yes, like for what?
I think it goes back to the conversation that you had about grit being racist, and then kind of like the fact that it kind of forces us to compartmentalize the different things that we experience, like our traumas and our grief and stuff like that, because ultimately, I feel like it all just reinforces this idea that like Black pain doesn't matter, like Black pain doesn't exist. We don't feel pain. Our bodies or like our lives are not worth what other lives are worth. And so I feel like that is something that trickles down in every industry, every field. So of course, in education, it's keep going. We don't care if you have anxiety. You need to take a test. We don't care if you have depression. You need to do your work. You're a bad student, right? Or you're going to be funneled into the prison, the school to prison pipeline, right? It's just like, how can we win? Can we get a break? Can we breathe?
We is tired. Like, and even to the point that in some school districts in Metro Atlanta, kids have, small group instruction as their main tool or main way of receiving their instruction right now. In other districts, kids are going to school for a full day online. Have been since August, still are. And it's like, well, they haven't given us a waiver for GMAS. When are we, like, who's going to say no? Like, if we don't distribute GMAS, what y'all going to do? Like, I really want to know, like, and like, note to parents, you can opt out of standardized testing for your kids. White folks do it all the time, let me tell you. when we were in another part of the city working with a different demographic. No, they didn't feel like their children were performing at the place they wanted them to perform by the end of the year. They had until, I think, and this may not be completely accurate, the day before standardized testing, or, you know, they had a very huge window to where they could say, I'm good. Maybe next year, maybe not.
Or they press the school psychologist to test the student to try to make sure that they can get accommodations or services so that they can have more time and get higher scores.
Billy, Susie, Becca all have IEPs. And you're like, wait.
And if they can't, they'll give them a 504. Like, look, whatever we can in there.
Yes.
Ooh, they weaponizing the MTS.
People don't realize that. People don't know that.
Yeah, and it's like,
our parents don't know that.
Look, drop the knowledge. Y'all, Black parents out there, you don't have to, your kids don't have to take those tests.
Right. And if you notice something is different.
College admission tests. If you want your kids to go to college.
And if you notice something is different about your child, you need to, you know, have a conversation. And it's okay if they have a 504 IEP. Like, we cannot still be ashamed to have somebody label our children.
Yeah. And that goes back to the mistrust, right? The mistrust, because, you know, and I've seen it manifest. We have kids who are differently abled. And then we have children who have experienced years and years and years of emotional trauma, and I don't want to say poor teachers who are working with very few resources, teachers who are unsupported, and all of the things, right? They roll together into this big ball. And then the kids are lashing out at school, and it's like, actually, you know, that child is not in need of, they don't have a cognitive disability. They have some emotional support that they need. And I see so many Black and brown children who are labeled or who have become like mislabeled. And I look at them and I'm like, you are performing on par with your grade level peers, or very close to it. Even better, if we want to use like the benchmarks that exist to check progress, right? Then some grade level peers. And that's not the place for you. But it's because the schools don't have the tools to support that emotional trauma. And we don't know what to do with a child who is lashing out. So we're just going to find them to have a cognitive disability. And it's like, actually, no. And if they do have a cognitive disability, it has been brought on from the amount of stress, and, or I don't want to say brought on, but it has been definitely exacerbated by the physiological impacts of trauma on your body. So it's like, I don't know. That's one thing. But I see, like, LaTrice, yes, we have to educate our parents, like, and then we show our parents, like, oh, your child didn't pass, like, didn't score proficient on GMAS, right? And then the parents are like, oh my God, like, the world's over. And it's like, actually, it's not. Like, we can't just hold the teachers and the kids accountable. Like, the system is broken. We got to hold that system accountable. And if we just don't take, I don't know, I don't want to be on the GMAS tangent, but if we standardized testing period, if we say no, what they gonna do? Take funding from all the schools in the state?
I mean, but I think what you're talking about is you're actually asking people to have courage. And I don't want to be a cynic, and I don't want to be like a pessimist, but I don't know if we have, like, one, it's not something that you teach in like teacher ed programs. It's not something you teach in school leadership. We don't teach people to have courage. We teach people, like Jacques was saying earlier, there's this culture of compliance. We teach people that, matter of fact, I always remember, this is also part of why I left the classroom. I had an administrator at one of the schools I was at. She said, we were having a PD, and she was talking, and she was talking about like test scores and talking about, why we needed to raise our scores and all these different things, and like what she was doing. And she said, when you sign up to teach in public schools and work in public schools, this is the game you sign up to play. So you need to go ahead and just be a part of this game. And I was like, see, that's the problem. I don't want to actually be a part of the game. Like, I think we should change this whole entire game. What we're doing doesn't work. But yet you're sitting here like, we need to do this and we need to do that. Let's make sure we work with this group, this bubble group of kids, because if we can get these kids to get a little bit higher, then we don't have to worry about the other kids over there. They can fail and we'll still do fine. And I'm just like, we're playing games, and you're playing games with people's lives. You're playing games with like where people are actually going to be in 10, 15, 20 years. So like, I don't want to play this game. I don't think nobody should have to play this game.
No one. Like, understanding like, okay, we have this many children who are projected based on the hundreds of diagnostics and benchmarks we've given them throughout the year instead of actually using that time to teach. But that's not tonight's discussion. And we have this many kids projected to being beginner. Okay, we have this many kids projected to be, in this quartile or another quartile. And in order for us to have a positive CCRPI score, or, in order for us to show that we are, becoming a better school, then what we need to actually do is zoom in and figure out how many kids that are on that cusp that we need to push over. And no, we're not going to say leave everybody else hanging, but that then becomes the work, right? Like that, because the GMAS countdown is happening every day. It's like, oh, how many more days? And it's like, actually, I don't care how many more days to GMAS, to be honest. I don't care how many more days until Park. I could do without. Jacques is very happy in this at this moment. He's frozen. Now he's gone. But yeah, it's just like I want my kids to be successful, but it's very taxing to play the game, especially when okay, so you did well, not did well. You got your growth points on GMAS, right? Because or you got your growth points or however the accountability is set up, right? Like, these kids are more than points. These kids are more like CCRPI. I don't care about what. Because if we lead with if we put equity at our focus, if we truly meet people where they are, young people where they are, that other stuff is going to happen. But because we are too focused in on looking a certain way. Oh, Jacques back. We're too focused on looking a certain way that we actually skip over the work. We spend all of our time looking good.
And I think it also has a lot to do with humanity, honestly. Like you said, these kids aren't scores, or like these kids aren't like a jersey number, or this person isn't just like a dollar sign in a seat for your school district to get money at the end of the year, right? But I think that it also just calls into question like whose humanity matters. And I think the answer is very obvious if we look at the people in power and the people who are really being served or given access to these different types of resources that will change their lives like 10, 15 years down the line,
Yeah. We've been at this a while. But I could talk about this all night and get up tomorrow and what they say, teach like a champion. But I don't subscribe to that ideology. But like I really just I don't know. I feel like I've
You don't want to be a no nonsense nurturer?
What?
You don't want to be a no nonsense nurturer?
I don't like that. Because sometimes there's God forbid there be some truth in the nonsense. But let's end on a positive note. What keeps y'all going?
One of the things I feel like that I've had to do in the pandemic to keep myself just like going and focused and like able to function, because again, in 2020, not only did we have the pandemic, but we also had we continue to have people get killed, and Black people being killed every other week, every other day. Like
they call it, the summer riots of 2020. The folks trying to write the history books, they already compartmentalized it.
What are they? Black Lives Matter summer, all types of different things. Mm-hmm. So all that was happening, everything. And so what I've had to do, and I try to make sure I do it every single day. At the bare minimum, I make sure I walk. Walking has been like my favorite thing to do. So like I will go on a walk and not even really have anywhere to go. It's not like I'm walking to like a destination. It's literally just, I want fresh air. I want to be able to, and things are different in other parts of the country, but like LA is still for the most part locked down. We ain't got nothing. There's nothing.
But we open, honey.
Yeah, I was like, hey, there's really not much to do. So
it's day party season.
Ain't no day parties. It's nothing. So I do that, and I bake. Like those are my two things that like, if nothing else I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my walks and I'm gonna go bake something. And so that's how I stay sane.
Yes. Can you bake something and send it to me, y'all? James be baking. It be so good. That is, I didn't code switch. I love it. The monkey bread, I could use some of that in my life.
That might be a weekend thing. We're gonna test it out, and then I'll let you know what works.
Put it in the mail.
Like it would have to go a shorter distance to make it to my destination. So.
You're not that far away.
You put me on the list too. Okay, Trace. Kind of following up on what James was saying, for me, it definitely has been very important to connect with nature during this time. That's why I'm literally outside on my balcony right now talking to y'all, because I'm like,
hey, outside.
Look at the trees and the mountains and stuff like that. Going to the beach has really been a saving grace for me. It's something about the water that's just like super calming and like very mysterious. It's something about the fact that man can't get to what's all the way down in there that I like and appreciate, and we will never be able to get down in there. And I think that's awesome. But also I feel like during this time I really have been reliant on my faith. And for me, that looks like a lot of different things. So it could be me having like a simple conversation with God, like in the morning when I wake up and start my day. It could be like listening to a podcast, like Transformation Church, Elevation Church, or something like that. Or listening to gospel music, just so I get like more positive thoughts and phrases in my head. Because sometimes I'm my worst critic and I just think a lot of negative things in there sometimes. So gotta quiet that voice and fill it up with positive things. And I practice a lot of gratitude every day. Even if it's a bad day, I try to find something that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
Definitely, like my colleague said, nature has been a big thing. Like when the gyms were closed down, I discovered that I actually can run, so started running the belt line and stuff, and it became fun to try to beat my time. So that has been good. And just for me, it's always having a cutoff point. Like during your day, you have to have a cutoff point where you say, you know what, enough is enough. This can get done tomorrow morning. This can get done another time, but I need my time to relax. And I find, like I tell my sister that, I tell a lot of people that, like, you just have to have a cutoff time. And don't be accessible for these people. If your assistant principal is hitting you up at 7:00 at night, no, go away. That's toxic. Leave me alone. Bye. I'm not answering the phone. I'm not. And I feel bad saying this too. So the other day I had a kid hit me up at 9:00, and your heart wants to be like, but then you're just like, you know what? I can't.
You don't have to be a martyr. Like
they don't pay you for that.
They didn't tell you had to be a martyr. You didn't sign up for that.
Well, and I'm like, this is and what helped me to be able to say not answer was, I'm like, bro, you don't even wake up for my class. So like, just because you up now at 9 p.m. does not mean I'm going to. But
not, bro. Not, bro. I love it though. No, like I'm like, I have to write that down. Like, you don't have to be a martyr. And like, how do we remember martyrs? Oh, they really did it for me. Like they like, not to isolate any belief system, but like for just Christianity, Jesus. Look how long it took for people to even appreciate it. Like, when it happened, it was just like, there were very few people who actually, even cared at that point in time. And honestly, like, it'll be great. 10 years, not 10, 100 years from now, they're like, you know what? That Mr. Etienne, Miss Turner, future Dr. Bridgeforth, it'll be, like they can write about us in 100 years. I ain't gonna be here in 100 years. Let's be real. And I don't want to run myself to my grave. Expedite the process.
Open your purse and give me the flowers now. Immediately.
Pay information in bio. I'm just kidding. No, but for real, like, there are so many things that I appreciate that you all shared, so many things that I want to do more, and even just like having organized this conversation, I am so grateful to. In the end, like, I feel like I've been challenged and I've grown here. Like, I don't have to be a martyr. And while I feel that, oftentimes I'm like, no, I do. Because if I don't say anything and no one else doesn't say anything, what's going to happen? Well, if you only say something, what's going to happen? So protect your peace, like, when you need to. And then alternatively to that, when you, or I'll say me, like, when I feel like I have, hushed support, I'm going to challenge those people. Thank you for supporting me. Justice is what love looks like in public. I need you to show up, like, because then I get labeled, or Jacques or James or Naj, we're labeled as the fanatic, the cynic, and everyone else is just like, oh, well, I'm going to run to my grave. I'm going to sprint there because of all of the psychological warfare, the mental warfare that's going on, right? So with that, I just want to challenge everyone to give yourself space and grace, right? Including myself. I feel it, like, in my body that I need space right now and grace. I'm sure I've just learned how to feel that in my body, though, like, as an adult, like as a 29-year-old, and I'm gonna be 30 in a month, adult. Like, I'm just figuring these things out. Like, I'm just identifying what does stress feel like in my body. What does it really mean to be tired? Like, not sleepy, not able to go to sleep, but like, what does rest feel like? what does recharging feel like? Just find that for yourself and remember that it's hard. We tired. And it's okay to be tired. It's okay to be exhausted. It's okay to say no. It's okay to tell bruh at 9 o'clock, or not tell him, to ignore him. Let me tell you something. My phone be on do not disturb at 10 o'clock. You email me on the weekend? I used to respond. No. If I don't get it before the end of my workday on Friday, consider it not received. And that's not, that's how I'm protecting my peace.
That's just maintaining boundaries, and that's okay. That's healthy. Yeah. I would be concerned if you didn't have any boundaries and you were just allowing people to keep giving you stuff and asking you stuff, and
come on,
that's taken from you, baby girl. Who's gonna save you?
Yes.
But with that, like,
yeah,
it's funny though, because I do think, like, in a pandemic, what people have thought is that they should have more. Like, now that we're Zooming and stuff into people's houses, people think they have access to who you actually are. You don't actually know me. I work with you, and that's fine. But, like, you don't know me.
Look, let me put my background up. You ain't even in my house.
What you're not about to do is email me and expect for me to, like, it's an emergency for you, but in the reality, none of this stuff is actually an emergency. Like, the way that I navigate some of this is like, is somebody going to die if I don't respond to this? And I don't work in a job where somebody's going to die if I don't respond to this. It's not what I do. So you can wait until tomorrow when I get ready to do that. And those boundaries are, like, that's the only way to function.
Amen. Yes. So, Ed fam, we're going to wrap up, but I just want to leave you out with that. Set up your boundaries. Don't be a martyr. Find your space. Give yourself grace. Love on yourself, because guess what? Unfortunately, like Jacques has said, they have not opened their purses or provided us our flowers yet. So, provide yourself some flowers. Open your purse. I don't know how that will work. But do something nice for yourself. Like, don't go buy more stuff for your classroom. Use that money to do something for yourself.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm going to end this. I loved being here with you all. Thank you to everyone who participated in the comments. Jacques, I think that's your sister, right?
Yeah, that's my sister.
Hey, girl. Isn't, like, your sister's teaching now, too?
Yes.
Lord, we done made teaching the family business. James, is your sister teaching?
She's still teaching.
My sister is about to graduate from Georgia State and be a teacher. She's student teaching now. What?
What are we doing?
It's something in the water. All right, y'all. We're going to end the broadcast, but thank you, and I'll see you next week, next Tuesday. All right. Bye.